Working in the NHS is a stressful job, taking on board other people's problems and emotions daily, but with a good team behind you, it can be done wonderfully. In the team I currently work with, this does not happen, and my overall well-being is at risk. You go into a meeting thinking everybody feels they belong except you. Exteriorly, they look fine, but interiorly, we must all be feeling the same. I don't think I've ever really felt comfortable because I'm waiting for the knockback. I find if I had a positive experience the week before, I come in a little bit more willing to communicate. Whereas if I felt it's not gone well last time, I sit there and I hope that I don't need to contribute. You end up belonging less because you hide away. Then the more confident personalities push themselves to the foreground and the meeting goes their way. You can wallow. It impacts on how you feel about all the staff members within the team because you start to see yourself as not belonging there as well. We have a huddle in the morning, all stood in a circle. This feels more informal, and I'm more likely to feel included. I see myself as middle. I'm not quite a manager because I do clinical and managerial work. That can leave you trapped between both. Management wants to hit the target. Clinical staff know they can't work any harder. So, hearing both sides, I have to make up my mind in the middle. If you have one side that's really negative and one side that's really positive, I think the more enthusiastic side might sometimes win me over. I disagree with that management style entirely. I'm more democratic. It should be more of a direct democracy. Then the team is happier because they've had their say. We've had people leave and turnover has increased. We've always had high turnover at the bottom because of the nature of the job. Now people that have been there 16 years are leaving and it's impacted morale quite heavily. A few have said they don't feel it's a democracy, don't feel they are listened to, or that there is a dynamic where they can change anything. It creates unease in the department. We're having to put more junior staff in charge of areas earlier in their career than you would want to, and they're being promoted faster than they ever would years ago. The experience isn't there behind them. Incident reports have increased. So the senior staff that are still there are having to work harder to train these people and watch them. It has quite a negative impact on the whole system. My old manager was supportive. The new one is more authoritarian. You don't feel wanted. It's very much if you fit as opposed to how you do the job. I think it's environmental, cultural, and the feel. It's like school with the friendship groups, personalities that are less dominant and more dominant personalities. If somebody keeps saying no to you, how far will you push them? There was a small project team based within the department. There was a completely different dynamic. Everybody was at the same level and had the same say. It was flexible on hours. If you're late in, just go home late. And a couple of the seniors within the department would time them in and out. They weren't in charge of that team. It was separately funded, but culturally they needed to micromanage it. If that happened in the street, I'd probably just walk off and refuse to engage, whereas at work you have to keep forcing that interaction, don't you? It probably affects you quite badly mentally. I've seen middle managers get a few stern words, but then nothing's happened. And consultants can make their own rules as they're not easy to replace. We can't bend rules, we are replaceable. But actually, we're not replaceable because of those years of experience.
Some days you feel the shoots of belonging, but within the wider MDT, I'm quite low on the pecking order. I just feel like a body in the room. We aren't asked for feedback. Sometimes people will speak in the MDT meetings and it's a lot of waffle, all their super ideas. They want people to think what an excellent job they're doing, to get gratitude and adulation to massage their ego. It's definitely a status thing. The meetings could be half the time. Within my initial team, I'm a lot more confident, less anxious, willing to share my opinions. I slowly grew into that, but in the wider MDT, I don't really feel like my voice has much airtime because I'm only a band 4. People in 6, 7, 8 roles might not listen to me. There are actually more unqualified members of staff in the room than band 5s and up, but we're referred to in the meetings as, "Oh, and you lot." It feels like segregation and makes me feel belittled. Despite my views and opinions being of sound judgment, people look down their noses. You can't just be your natural self. Staff are tired and stretched as it is. There's little time to work on relationships and build friendships where you can have a joke and a play. Sometimes I get the idea the NHS is not the place for that. Our team specifically is a bit fractured. The ones who shout the loudest often get what they want. Structurally, leadership hasn't been there really. It's very regimented sometimes. I don't think there's enough opportunity for the creative element or doing stuff for yourself. Sometimes you have to put your own stamp, your own style on treatment. We've been looking to potentially change things up, and our boss has said, if you feel confident and safe, then have a go. Why he doesn't see that through with other team members, I don't know. But then there's a lot of pushback. 1 or 2 in the team have said, we shouldn't be doing that, it's not our role, but it doesn't involve them, so I don't know why they're putting their 2p's in. I think there's a fear in case someone makes a complaint or something goes wrong. I don't think they want that accountability, but a lot of the time, I think they're just being lazy. They've got stuff going on outside of work, so for them it's just go through the motions 8 to 4, and if there isn't change, they can continue to coast. If you've been doing something for 18 years, maybe you don't want to go outside your comfort zone, so it depends what stage you are in life and within your career within the NHS, I suppose. But I like to actually see the patients do well, and that's probably my biggest frustration within the team and with the wider MDT. No guidance from the top, people making decisions aren't often patient-facing or have any idea of how the day-to-day running works. I think we should be reviewed more. There's not enough observations and reflections and chances for feedback. There should be more focus groups, hearing from those on the ground. I think there should be more of a regular process of checking in, seeing how people are feeling and getting a flavour, which might lead to people feeling less agitated or isolated within a team.
I suppose when I first started the team, I did feel uncomfortable, a little bit wobbly. I was late and I wasn't sure if I was going into the right room, which was nerve-wracking. Even though in hindsight this team has turned out to be lovely and probably the nicest team I've ever worked in, no one really said hello. I think there was one nurse I knew who was friendly and she said, "You come and sit next to me." But there were no introductions or anything. The person who leads that meeting is the consultant. In my experience, always is, and they've always been the person that we ask permission of, really. I always feel on the peripherals of the team anyway, on the outside. I feel I am the one different profession. I've had to work quite hard to integrate myself into the team, gauging how that team works and trying to fit in and mould. I was getting back into the swing of feeding back and I got a bit ahead of myself and I did this full assessment. The consultant then implied I'd taken up too much of the team's time. I felt embarrassed and belittled. I think observing the way people treat each other makes you feel you're in a safe place or not. When I think of me being a mum and trying to teach my teenagers how to be polite and socialise and be inclusive, I'd have a lot to say about it if they behaved like that. Some of the consultants would really put you down, really scary, quite terrifying. I guess it's just how we bring up our kids now. They don't see a male doctor as someone you should always have to agree with, whereas I think I'm probably the generation where that was ingrained. We're trying to bring our women up to have more of a voice and not feel like they have to be submissive. To be honest, I feel like the women consultants have been more brutal than the men. We don't feel like we have that voice to say, actually, no. There is a submissiveness within the team, but I can see that changing too. It's hard to change things in the NHS. The younger generation are very aware of mental health, their rights and how they should be treated. I'm not sure the NHS is a very attractive place for them to be, as it stands now.